In this lesson, we're going to focus on perimeter and circumference of polygons and of circles. So the first thing here is, remember, perimeter is when we're talking about polygons. So you're adding up all the sides. And circumference is like the perimeter of a circle. So it's the outside part of the circle. So first of all, this example here is saying the perimeter of a regular pentagon. So pentagon meaning there's 5 sides, is 15x plus 30. So that's what the perimeter is. What is the length of one side? Well, if the entire thing is 15x plus 30, we want to know what one side is. So that means we have to divide by 5. So the length of one side would be equal to the perimeter, which is 15x plus 30 divided by the number of sides. If there's 5 sides, so essentially what we're doing here is we're dividing each piece. So 15x divided by 5 would be 3x. 30 divided by 5 would be 6. So there's the length of one side. The next piece here is going backwards. So if this is the length of one side of an octagon, so remember an octagon has 8 sides. If that's the length of one side, what's the perimeter? Well, the perimeter means add all the sides. So if there's 8 of them, that means you have to add these 8 times. Or just say that the perimeter is 8 times the length of one side. So in this case, we're going to be multiplying. So we get 16x minus 24. So that would be your perimeter. So for example 1, if you wanted to, you could have use this perimeter idea, the number, so number of sides times the length of each side equals a perimeter. You could have plugged into that and solved, but it's probably easier just to think through it and say, okay, well, divide the perimeter by the number of sides. Next one, we have the perimeter of a square is 64 inches. So that means we know that the entire thing is 64. So if you want to find what one side is, we could divide that by 4, since there's 4 sides in a square. And we're going to want to do that because we're trying to find the area of a square. So in order to find the area, that's going to be your length times width, or base times height, or in this case, side times side. We have to know what one of the sides is. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your 64. So if the perimeter is 64, well, one side would be 64 divided by 4. So when we do that, we end up with 16. So then for area, it's going to be 16 times 16, or 16 squared. So you get 256. My units here, so for the side length, it'll be inches. Perimeter is inches, but for area, it's going to be inches squared. The next example here is talking about a circle. So now they're giving you the area of a circle. They want you to find the circumference. So a couple formulas you need to have. So area is pi r squared for a circle. Circumference is 2 pi r, or pi times diameter. Now, if I know the area is 49 pi, I'm going to plug that in for A. If I can solve for the radius, well, then I can use this formula here to find circumference. So I'm going to, first of all, divide both sides by pi. Cancel out the pi's here. So this means I have 49 equals r squared. So square root both sides. So when you do that, you get 7. So the radius is 7. So then if we plug that in over here, so circumference is 2 pi times 7, or if you use this other formula, it would be pi times 14, because you'd have to double the radius. So either way, you end up with 14 pi. And since this says to round to the nearest hundredth, I'm going to put this in my calculator. Otherwise, I would leave this in terms of pi to get an exact answer. In my calculator, I need to make sure I use the pi button, which is down above the comma on the left-hand side. Remember, we're not going to round until the very end, so we're using pi. So I get 43.98 if I'm rounding to the nearest hundredth. and it doesn't tell us units, but this would just be in units. So since circumference is like a perimeter, you're just going to keep your units the same, versus area would be units squared. So just keep that in mind. So then the next example here says the perimeter of a regular hexagon is 72. If the length of one side is represented by 2x plus 4, what is the value of x? So perimeter hexagon has 6 sides. So we know that the perimeter is going to be 6 times one side length, since it's a regular polygon. So if the perimeter is 72, we know that 6 times one side length will give us 72. So instead of saying add all the sides, I'm just saying 6 times one of the sides. So then we just need to basically solve this equation. So you get 72 equals 12x plus 24. Bring over the 24, so 72 minus 24 gives me 48 equals 12x. Divide that by 12, so we get x equals 4. So again, more with perimeter. You can draw out pictures as well if that helps you. Sometimes it's hard to draw out some of the polygons, so if you don't have to draw them out, you don't need to, but if it's helpful, go ahead and draw them out. So then from here, the last example is a common example that typically comes up on Regents exams, where now you're trying to find the perimeter on using your graph. So let's go ahead and start by graphing. So we have negative 6, 2. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 up to negative 3, 6. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And 5, 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Our goal is to find the perimeter of this triangle. So if you think about what you need to know all of the side lengths, because perimeter means add all sides. So that means we're going to have to use distance formula or Pythagorean theorem and find the length of each of the sides so that we can then add them together. So I'm going to use distance formula just to review that with you. Make sure when you're using your distance formula that you're labeling. So you're either saying AB or you're writing the distance of AB if you're talking about AB. So from here, I'm going to plug in. So I have negative 3. Make sure you're subtracting your x's together. So negative 3 minus negative 6 plus, subtract the y's, 6 minus 2. Remember the order. You can switch the order when you're subtracting, but make sure the x's go together and the y's go together. And then I'm going to simplify this. So this is going to be negative 3 plus 6. So that means it's going to be 3. And then I get 4 here. So 9 plus 16. So that's going to give me the square root of 25, which will reduce down to 5. So that works out nice. I'm going to go ahead and just label the sides as I go. So then the next one here is going to be BC, or the distance of BC. So if I subtract these, the x values, I have 5 minus negative 3, and then 0 minus 6. So this gives me 8 squared plus negative 6 squared. So this is going to give me 64 plus 36, which gives me square root of 100, which again, luckily works out nice. So I get 10 for that. So I'm going to label that one. And then the last one here is AC. So I have to do 5 minus negative 6. And then 0 minus 2. So this is going to give me 11 squared plus negative 2 squared. So this gives me 121 plus 4. So that's going to give me square root of 125. If I look at my answer, it says simplest radical form. So that means let's go ahead and break that down right away so we don't have to worry about doing it later. We have it. So if we take this and we break it down, 25 goes into that 5 times. So 25 times 5 gives us 125. So 5 root 5 would work. So then to find the perimeter, so this is 5 root 5, to find the perimeter, which is the last step, don't do all this work and forget to find the perimeter, means add all the sides. So I know my 3 sides, so we add them up. So 5 plus 10 plus 5 root 5. Since it says simplest radical form, we have to leave this with the radical in it. So what's going to happen is you're going to combine your like terms, which is the 5 and the 10, so that'll become 15. But this 5 root 5, you can't combine with the 5 and the 10, so you're just going to leave that as 5 root 5. And your units would just be units on here. And that's it. So if it said to round to a decimal, then you would actually put it in your calculator. So really with these perimeter questions, you've done a lot in middle school with perimeter. So the only thing that's really new is this last question, but that's just using distance formula and then adding them together. So think about your perimeter formula, which is just adding all the sides, and then just remember circumference formula, and go ahead, get some key ideas written down, and then check your understanding problems.